Art is hard to define. Art is subjective. Art is something that invokes emotion. Art is impossible to define. Art is something that differs from person to person. You could ask 100 people what they consider art, and chances are you get 100 different responses. I consider art to be something that shows the mastery of a skill. You can look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and see that it is a brilliant painting created by one of history's greatest painters, Michelangelo. It shows how he mastered the art of painting, and this piece is just a result of that mastery. But this definition is very open-ended, because why be a fool to not call the Sistine Chapel ceiling a work of art? I'd be willing to believe that most people wouldn't see a perfect score in bowling or winning a fighting game tournament as art. But I do. I see these things as art because they're something that can't be done by a simple novice. This is an extreme level of dedication, whether that dedication goes towards creating a story that spans across several novels or breaking a large amount of coconuts with just your elbows. They are the fruits of skill and practice, and they culminate into art. However, my definition of art has another, stricter stipulation. I believe art needs to take full advantage of whatever medium it's created in. Every medium has unique qualities that make certain pieces of art more suited for a specific medium. You could have someone write a beautifully detailed description of a painting, but nothing you read about it will ever compare to seeing it visually. When H.P. Lovecraft writes about colors that don't exist, impossible geometry, and monsters that should you even look at them, you'd die where you stand, he's taking full advantage of the medium of writing to tell a story. You can't bring this to other mediums because it is literally impossible to accurately do so. Attempting to do so would take away any of the horrors created from the reader's imagination and leave none of the substance or impact the original medium does. So, if art is something that shows mastery over a skill and a medium, then how does this apply to games? What do games offer as a medium? When compared to other mediums such as television, comics, movies, and music, games have one distinct difference: interaction. Once you introduce a level of interaction, you run a very thin line of turning your medium into some form of a game, whether intentionally or not.
Bandersnatch is a unique Black Mirror story in that it's interactive.
Black Mirror Bandersnatch is a great example of this. While most would probably consider it a movie, I see it as a video game. The interaction is a core part of this game-movie hybrid, and I don't think it'd be fair to refer to it as a movie when it has the core basis of a game. Interaction is what makes games a unique medium, and Bandersnatch would not be what it is without the levels of interactivity. But what would be considered a display of mastery when it comes to creating a video game? This is where I tend to disagree with what most people would consider art when referring to video games. People tend to look at a game's graphics or story or other similar aspects when it comes to using games as an example of pieces of art. And while I think these aspects can be considered art, I don't necessarily think it makes the games they're connected to art. The Last of Us story is the main reason people remember that game so fondly, and it's some of the best storytelling I've seen in a game. But the story isn't what makes the game art. The story is art in the medium of writing, just as amazing graphics can be art in the medium of animation, drawing, 3D model, etc. But for a game itself to be considered art, I believe it must show mastery over gameplay. The gameplay is ultimately what makes the game. If your game has no substance to its gameplay, then it should be remade in a different medium. Telltale's Walking Dead is a great example of this in my opinion. The game told a great story, but the gameplay was near non-existent. Your choices ultimately don't amount to anything, as the game always ends the same, and the other gameplay segments are just quick time events or walking around. The interaction is unnecessary, as player input does not affect the true outcome, and the gameplay is anything short of masterful. It's a perfect example of a game I wouldn't consider art. As a product, I think it stands fine on its own, and it can be a game you enjoy, but I don't think it takes full use of its medium by any extent. It can easily be remade into a movie with little, if anything, lost in translation. So what would some games that would be classified as art by my definition be? My favorite game of all time, Tetris, is I believe to be the best example of game as an art form. The original Tetris has the bare minimum when it comes to graphics, 2 colors and squares. The music is there, but it's far from the focus, and there is no story. All there is pure gameplay. A very simple concept, but done phenomenally. It practically invented the puzzle game genre, and after several decades, it's still widely considered to have mastered it. This game is something that both can't be recreated into other mediums in any way without inherently losing what makes Tetris what it is. And it shows a clear mastery over the gameplay if it has kept players entertained for this many decades. Another good example would be Super Mario Bros. On the NES. The game once again has lackluster graphics, a decent soundtrack, and hardly any story. Yet it's something to this day that is seen in every good platformer. The timing-based jump. This semi-analog jump technique is what makes the game so much fun to play. Mario feels great to control because of it, and it shows a clear mastery of gameplay to create something so fundamental to a genre and gaming as a whole. The Mario Bros. Movie is proof enough that you can't recreate Marios in other mediums without losing what makes it Mario. This game is art. There are so many other examples of games as art, from the modern age to the retro. Minecraft, Doom, Street Fighter, Mother 3. I can go on and on about why I consider these games to be art, but I like to think my other examples have made the point clear. I believe art is something that shows both mastery of a skill and mastery over a medium. For a game to be considered art, you need masterful gameplay and to make full use of the interaction provided by the medium. As long as you do those, I will see your game as art. That being said, art is something that means something to individuals. Your definition of art may not match mine, and even if it does, you may disagree on what I do and don't consider art, and that's fine. No one interpretation is inherently better nor worse than the others, and that's what makes art so unique. I just ask that you respect my views the same way I respect yours. And if you want to leave your opinions in the comments, I'm more than willing to have a discussion. With that, have a good one.